Hey guys, happy Friday. It's Ted Bogert, TGIF. We are back with the TED Show. I'm loving the note that we're leaving the TED Show on this week. I have a very inspirational young man on the show, Jeff Steinberg. We're going to talk about a masterpiece in progress, Tiny Giant. When you hear his story, I know you're going to be as moved and motivated and inspired as I am. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Ted. And this is really quite exciting for me. My pastor was on your show a little over 2 weeks ago, and I saw that, and I thought, well, I wonder if he'd be interested in having me. So I sent you a message. Nothing like
it was perfect.
Nothing like self advertising.
But I think that so it's funny because I get a lot of messages like that. And so I thought, now who is this? And then when you said Scott, I got it. And then I started to take a little bit more of a deep dive. And so you have a beautiful, wonderful story to share with us. So give us some origin story. Let's learn about Jeff Steinberg. Let's learn about a masterpiece or masterpiece in progress and Tiny Giant. So give us a little background.
Well, the first thing I want people to think about is quit focusing on the handicap and start appreciating the gift. Everybody's got a story to tell. And what I've discovered is that for the most of us, we don't like our story. I'm too tall, I'm too short, my ears stick out, my nose is too big, I've got freckles, I've got zits, my freckles have zits, my hair is wavy, my hair used to wave. Those are the excuses that we use. But my story is different. I was a thalidomide baby. I was born in 1951, on August 18, 1951, as a result of the drug thalidomide, which was used from 1948 to 1953 to help women who were having trouble keeping the pregnancy. Well, it did that. It also boosted the mom's immune system and the baby's immune system. But what they didn't know at the time was it caused multiple birth defects, missing limbs, deformity of limbs, all kinds of things like that. And so I was born with no arms, nothing up my sleeves. I have 2 legs that are deformed. My right leg has 5 toes. My left leg has 3 toes. I have no toenails. My toes don't have bones like normal people. But that's not what matters. My mom didn't know about my disability until I was 17 months old. My grandmother was the first family member to see me. And when she got a hold of my dad and he got to the hospital, he started to make some important decisions, at least to his way of thinking, and decided that my mom was not to know anything until the doctors had decided whether or not I was even going to live. And then he would make the decisions from there. And my grandmother told my mom when I was 17 months old that I was still alive. And And my mom leaned against the counter at the kitchen where she was dicing something for dinner. And she said, "Mom, why won't they let me see him? Is he ugly?" Now, I think my mother was thinking about facially deformed, much like we might think of somebody who has Down syndrome or who has some sort of facial deformities or retardation in that area. And my grandmother stood up. She walked over to my mom. She put her arm around her, and in her broken Lithuanian accent, she said, "No, Ruti, he's not ugly. He's beautiful.
Oh, man.
He has a Yiddish kopf, a Jewish head, a Jewish face." My mom did not get to see me for the first time until I was almost 2 years old.
Wow.
In a children's welfare shelter in Philadelphia. I would not want to have been at the dining room table that night that my mom found out.
That's right, because your dad knew the whole time.
Right. And
that sounds like that dinner table conversation must have been really bad.
Yeah, because he had ordered my grandmother not to tell. I mean, vehemently, you know. And so my dad looked at my grandmother, and there were darts going back and forth because it was my mother's mother, and she thought that she ought to know. And the truth is, you don't rise above a situation by hiding from it.
Correct.
And that was the problem. After that point, it became very difficult for my mom to deal with me. They would come to visit me at Shriners Hospital because when I was 2.5 years old, I was placed in Shriners Hospital for crippled children in Philadelphia, out on the boulevard, you know, Roosevelt Boulevard, out near the Turnpike. And I was there for about almost 5 years, in and out. Had multiple surgeries, about 35 plus operations. They fitted me with my very first artificial arm, which was nothing more than a stump socket with a spoon attached so that I could learn to feed myself.
A spoon attached?
Yeah, and it had a rocker that would, you know, so that when I would move, it would stay level, you know, and that way I could put food on it and then it would stay level and I could bring it to my mouth. I was fitted for my first leg braces, but I learned to do all kinds of things with my feet. I learned to write with my feet. Can you write with your feet, Ted?
No, I can barely write with my hands. It's a lost art, but you had to overcome so much. Who is providing the motivation and the support during this time when because you said you're at Shriners for 5 years?
It was mostly the nurses.
It's the nurses, right?
Mostly the nurses and my teacher. They just refused to let me think that I couldn't do whatever it is I wanted to do. And they encouraged me. In fact, the doctors would come every Friday at about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. All the interns and the chief of surgery would come and they would read my chart, make recommendations for whatever. And of course, the first thing Dr. Moore did was read my chart. Well, after weeks of listening to this, word for word, one day he got about a fourth of the way through, and I started in, and everybody went looking at each other like, what's he doing? And Dr. Moore just put the chart back and just motioned for them to listen to me, and I told them everything that was in the chart. And so that's basically what became our routine. And but I learned to do all kinds of things with my feet. I learned to write with my feet. I used to suck my big toe. Can you do that?
I cannot.
I even learned to feed myself with my feet. Can you feed yourself with your feet?
No, I can barely feed myself with my hands, Jeff, at this age.
Can you get your feet to your mouth?
No.
I was told you were pretty good at putting your feet in.
I walked right into that one, but yes.
There goes the off switch.
So you're just are you positive this whole time? Like, I understand hindsight's 20/20, and you're reflecting back. Were you feeling positive then? Did you feel different? Were you made to try to feel like you didn't fit in, or was everyone giving you the love and support you needed so that you just felt good? Like, where were you at emotionally as you're going through this?
I refused to feel like I couldn't fit in. If I set my mind to do it, take a watch apart. You remember the old wind-up watches, you know?
Yeah. I
could take one apart, and for the most part, I could put it back together. It didn't work, but I could put it back together. You know? But here's the thing. I was one of these people who, I mean, they'd put me down on the floor, and I just crawl under the beds, and they'd have to try to trap me in order to get me because they'd have to crawl under the beds in order to catch me. But I was one of these people who I knew what I wanted to do. I went for it. You know, my father used to tell me, Ted, he used to say, Jeffrey, never say I can't until you try. Because you never know what you can do until you try. Because the difficult we do right away. The impossible takes a little longer.
That's right.
I don't know if my father actually believed that.
But he told you that.
But he would tell me that. Yeah. And he always let me believe that, okay, if you want to be a salesperson and sell for the school PTA, go for it. If you want to, be a performer, go for it. Although I will confess that I was about 9 years old and we went to New York up near the Bronx for a Passover Seder. And you know how families do, they sing in the car and stuff like that. Well, my father attended Yeshiva University in New York, and so we were singing Hebrew songs, Yiddish songs, like Hava, Nagila, Hava, Nagila, Hava. And the problem is that for a 9-year-old who's not used to singing those songs, they use chords and structures that are a little unusual. So along the way, we're singing on the way home, and my father looks back in the rearview mirror and says, "Jeffrey, if you do anything for a living, don't sing." So I became a singer.
Of course. Where is this? So you have this indomitable spirit. I feel like you understood early on, for whatever reason, it was one of your gifts that I'm not going to allow anything that has any cards that have been dealt to me to impact how I'm going to live my life.
Absolutely. And part of it was just not wanting to be left out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I refused to think that I was handicapped because I didn't want to be left out. Anything you can do, I can do better, that sort of thing. And the truth is, when I was 9 years old, one day the doctors came in and they said, "Jeffrey," after we had gone through the whole, rounds routine, they said, "We're going to send you home. We can't do anything more with you till you stop growing." Well, I'm 4 feet 6 inches tall. So I looked at the doctor and I said, "Give it a week." And so I got to go home. And Ted, that was what I wanted more than anything. I wanted to be a brother. I wanted to be a son. I wanted to be a grandson. And I wanted to be a part of the neighborhood like other kids. And my mom was worried that I'd get hurt. But I refused to listen, sort of. But it got too hard for my mom and dad to take care of me and 3 girls. It was the girls that were the problem. It's always the girls that were the problem. So I had 3 sisters. They're all beautiful. They're all perfect. And I got to live at home a total of 9 months. And then I was placed as a ward of the state of Pennsylvania into the Good Shepherd, or into a foster care family, while I was placed by the state later 63 miles away to the Good Shepherd home for kids with disabilities and old people. And before anybody starts to feel sorry for me, it was probably the best move of my life, because while I was at Good Shepherd for the 10.5 years, and I went to public school, and I, and did all the things that other kids did, what I did was I met a wonderful couple, a Christian couple, who dared to allow me to believe that I, Jeff Steinberg, am fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139:14. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God makes no mistakes, and God makes no junk. And I dared to believe it.
Love it.
And that became my story.
So how do you take that as so as you're getting older, right? A different set of challenges, whether you are your shoes or my shoes or whomever's shoes. It just, as you get older, things change. You have lived a life of being a motivator and inspirational. Has it always been easy? We actually had that question before we went live. How do you handle it? I'll rephrase it. How do you handle your day to day? You don't appear that you struggle, but we all know people struggle. How do you maintain the positivity and keep upbeat?
It starts by asking the right questions. I said before, you and I were talking about this. If you ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong answers. Right. If if you think you know it all and you have all the answers, you haven't asked the right questions. It starts with asking, who am I? When you know who you are, when you like who you are. See, if you don't like who you are, there's nobody's going to want to buy what you have to sell.
Absolutely.
You can tell people all day long, I love God, I have this great product to sell, but you're looking in the mirror saying that I'm not the right guy to sell it because I've got all these things wrong with me. Well, the truth is, we all have abilities, and that's the second question. What are my abilities and what are my limitations? See, I recognize my abilities. I can do graphic design. I can do video editing. I'm a singer. I'm a recording artist. I'm a motivational keynote speaker. I'm an award-winning comedian, humorist. I had a 5-year-old that wanted to know why I didn't have any hands. I told him I used to bite my fingernails, and one day I went too far. He's in trauma therapy.
I would imagine.
You know, I know my limitations. And here's the thing, Ted. It's not enough to just know what I've been given. I've got to appreciate what I've been given. I've got to make the most out of what I've been given, but I've also got to acknowledge that there are things I cannot do. My limitations are the things I cannot do. Now, I can't bathe myself. I can't dress myself. I'll never be a star basketball player, even though I've been called hookshot. You know, there are things that we cannot do. And if you deny the one, you make a lie out of the other.
Correct.
Because all the stuff that you can do means nothing if you can't accept the fact that there are limits and limitations. And if you don't believe that, go to the top floor of any building in Orlando, Florida, you know, step out on the window ledge, jump off and flap your arms as fast as you can, and you'll find a challenge you cannot beat.
Correct. Something
you cannot do. So I know that. And that's part of what keeps me going. You know, I wanted to, be the best at everything. You know, I'd be the best at being who I am. You know, so when I would get up on the platform, my story became the platform.
Yeah.
You know, if I can do what I do with what I've got, you've got more. What's your excuse?
Well, tell me what that was like. I'm curious because you have this positive energy, right? You have this positive approach. What was that like as you have a family? So was it hard? Were you harder because you're like, okay, guys, there's nothing that you can come to me with that's going to be more of a challenge than what I've had to deal with? Were you more of a harder person going, you just got to suck it up, buttercup? What was that like? You seem so calm and gentle and positive.
Well, my wife and I are a blended family. One night we got blended. We are both second marriages. I was married for 12 years, and I have a son who is my son. And then I married Ellen 27 years ago, and she brought with her 2 boys and a girl. So altogether, we have 4 children. But my son, I was doing a lot of traveling at the time. But he always saw me, you know, he would introduce his friends. When he was little, his neighbor friend would come by and to play, and immediately he'd say, "This is my dad. He has a tickle hand," and he would want to take my artificial arm off so I could show them my stump, which is what I'd use to tickle him. And he'd want us to roll around on the floor and tickle. But I always told my son, you can be or do anything you're willing to work hard enough to be good at. You see, it's not just enough to be able to do it. You got to work to be good at it.
Yes.
You know, my father always used to tell me, Jeffrey, if you're going to do anything in life, be good at it or don't waste everybody's time.
Yeah.
And when I started, and let me backtrack to some of my story. At Good Shepherd, I started to, while I was there, I started to meet gospel singers. And I decided that I liked that side of the table, you know, being on the stage. I used to want to be a radio station disc jockey, and I was friends with the guys in Allentown at WAEB Radio, and I used to go do remotes with them and read the news and read commercials and stuff like that. Now they don't do that anymore. But I decided I wanted to be on the other side of the microphone, on stage. And I started to watch them perform and sing. But not having come from an evangelical background as a child, I saw the performance side of it and said, I could put a little more glitz and glitter into it. And I could take what they do and throw that into the mix. And I could make this a fun presentation, because if you're not fun, the audience is going to be ready to go home after the first 2 minutes. Because you only get a few minutes. You only get one sentence to grab their attention, or one thing. And when I open with a song, it's always a song that's going to grab their attention. Or if I open with a story or one line or something, that's what I do to get their attention. And now that I have your attention, here's what I want you to know. Okay? So I went to Good Shepherd. I graduated from high school. I called my mom and dad and told them I was leaving Good Shepherd and that I was going to go to Bible college. And my mom and dad came down that evening. Now, Ted, my visits with my mom and dad went from once a week when I first got there to maybe once or twice a year, because it was very difficult. My mom carried a lot of guilt. She blamed herself because of my disability. My dad blamed himself because of my disability, because he didn't have any more boys. And he wanted to prove that there was nothing wrong with his boy genes, you know? And so it was difficult. And so they came down, and I was going to move in with this wonderful couple that were friends of mine and go to Bible college. And my mom and dad said to me, Jeffrey, if you do this, you're on your own. And if it doesn't work, don't call us, because we can't take care of you. And we wish you well. But if you change your mind, call us by Saturday. This was Wednesday. And we'll come to graduation on Sunday. Well, I didn't change my mind. I laid in bed thinking to myself, looking at the ceiling and saying, God, if you hear me, they haven't always been there for me, but you have. And I heard this voice in my head, just as clear as if I was listening to you, Ted. I heard this voice in my head say, you stick with me. We will go places. We will do things. And we will make a difference. And I'll never forget that Sunday, I got to Muhlenberg Hall at Muhlenberg College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And as I was walking toward the first door in the hallway to go into the big hall, there were 771 graduating students, plus their families in the bleachers. I saw a little girl come out of another door and start walking toward me. And the closer she got, the faster she walked, until she was almost at a run. And when she got close enough for me to recognize her as my little sister, she threw her arms around me and she said, I just wanted to let you know that we were here. Mom and Dad are in the bleachers. And I heard this voice in my head say, you stick with me. We will go places. We will do things. And we will make a difference. And that's the way it's been ever since. The day I left Good Shepherd was the scariest day of my life. And again, it wasn't until I stepped over the threshold that I realized I could do this. And that voice said, we will go places. We will do things. And we will make a difference.
You have certainly made a difference, my friend.
So that's kind of, and I went to Bible college in 1972, 1 week from today, on the 29th of October, or 1 week from yesterday, on the 29th of October, I will celebrate 48 years. 48 years ago, I sang a duet with Doug Oldham on a TV program called the Old Time Gospel Hour with Dr. Jerry Falwell on 492 television stations around the world, and it launched my career.
And you never looked back.
And I never looked back, and I never stopped. I started a singing group in college. We were called the Total Victory Trio. There weren't much victory. We weren't very total, and there were 5 of us in the group. So I guess math is not our strong suit.
All right, so tell me, I have to ask because we're running out of time. People are already asking me, how can they reach you? How can they get your book? How can they get involved? How can they book you as a keynote speaker or learn more about you? Because obviously you got lots of love going on here.
I have 2 websites. One is down below, tinygiant.com. That if you are a church or a ministry organization and you're wanting that side of what I do, contact me at tinygiant.com. I also have jeffsteinberg.net for any of your companies and organizations that are looking to do like fundraisers and that sort of thing. And you can call me at 901-230-JEFF, Jeff. I told the phone company I wanted a number that was as easy to remember as my name, or 901-754-JEFF. So you can contact me that way. I am available to come and speak for your organization. I would love to have the privilege. You can buy my product. I have CDs, I have a book, I have a DVD, and anything else I'm going to have is going to be on my website. Ted, this has been wonderful.
You're amazing.
So excited about. I guess I talked too much.
I did nothing except listen to your story with a lot of awe and respect and love. So I'm thankful you shared that. I'd love for people to check out tinygiant.com or jeffsteinberg.net. Find out more about Jeff and what he's doing. The Tiny Giant. It's funny because when you messaged me, I don't always look at what's going on. I like to be sort of surprised. And so the title, Tiny Giant, caught my attention. I'm like, what is this? What does this mean? What's happening? That's an interesting, even for my show, that's an interesting title. And then I was just mesmerized.
Well, it was actually the title song of my album. And when I first heard the song, I hated it. It was like I'm 4 feet 6 inches tall. I'm just short people, Tiny Giant. I mean, really. And now I get people who say you can't come and sing at my event if you don't do Tiny Giant. But I also wanted to mention we have a new updated website that's being developed. I don't know what to say on the platform, but if you want to peek at it, it's at jeffsteinberg.us, and it's more updated and it's more information. Unfortunately, the store's not completely set up yet. There's some things missing from it, but it'll give you a hint as to some of where we're going.
jeffsteinberg.us. So if you can't find him in any of those places, reach out to me and I'll get you to him. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jeff. That was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
Give yourself a raise.
Somebody should give me a raise. All right, Jeff Steinberg, you guys go out. You said you were motivated and inspired by him. I am too. Go out and check it out. Thanks so much, Jeff. Everybody have a amazing weekend. We'll talk to you guys soon.